What's going on, friends and fam? You are in my new studio, which is super cool. Go on YouTube and check it out. If you haven't already, I'll probably have a clip of the new studio released by then. But we are now on lesson 8 of my mixing course, Sonic Gold Mix Strategy. And I'm super excited to just dive into this mix now. It's been a while. I actually took a trip to Costa Rica. I've been gone for about a month or so away from this mix, which is kind of cool. It just gives me some time to listen back to it with a new perspective, as well as listening back to the mix in a new room. You know, I have a completely new studio here. So acoustically, I may hear things a little differently, but at the end of the day, the lessons are still the same. So I'm super excited to dive into lesson 8 here, and today I'm going to mainly be focusing on the drums. So I mainly want to focus this lesson on processing the drums, EQing the drums, just making the drums more exciting. And these are realistic drums, live drums. And that's what this lesson is all about today. And we'll see here, like, one thing that I noticed when playing this mix back in my new room is, to me personally, I just felt that the vocals sound amazing, the music sounds amazing, but the drums in particular didn't have enough punch to them. And everything was kind of pushed up against the vocals a little bit, and that may be a cause of a few things. We might have been limiting a little bit too much, so I'm just going to go over some things and pick up where I left off, as well as provide you all the teaching moments from here forward. So this is lesson 8. Let's start off just by playing the song and warming up our ears to it.
Make me wait to feel what you need from me. Make me change.
So I'm gonna go closer where the drums come in.
That I'm not good enough.
So our vocal sounds incredible, but it is quite loud at the moment. I shouldn't say loud like it's overbearing or anything, but it's at the top of the mix. So I definitely want this mix to have energy in the music, and especially punch in the drums. So I'm just going to balance the drums with the rest of the music and the vocals a little bit more.
That I'm not good.
So one thing that we can do to do that, of course, is bring up the drums in our drum group here. So here goes our drums.
That I'm not good enough just to stay comfortable.
Just brought up the drum group like 2.3 dB, kind of pushed the drums and made them more engaging, more up front a little bit more for me.
That I'm not good.
So if you're also not feeling the drums as much, this is why we created groups. So we don't want to just crank this all the way up, although it is a thing of balance. So what we can do next is actually bring down the music and the vocals. So let's try doing the music first.
That I'm not good
And now let's do the vocals a little bit, mainly the lead vocal.
that I'm not good enough just to stay comfortable in your arms. Keep me waiting.
I think I want a little bit more music.
Keep me waiting. Got all this time. Keep me waiting.
So So the balance is getting a lot better for me, and overall, like, the sound of the mix was good. It's just balance. So this lesson is starting off with just, you know, how you can simply come back to a mix and use our groups right here just to balance your mix a little bit further based upon where you left off, and not completely change the mix by, you know, changing each one of these volume levels, etc.
Keep me waiting. Got all this time.
So that helped me get the punch that I was lacking from the drums. Just simple volume movements, which is great. And then the last thing I'm going to look at here, the next thing I should just say, is limiting. I think I was just limiting a bit too much. Let's play this section.
Keep me waiting.
Yeah, as you can see here, -15. So I'm limiting a lot on the drums. So this is all about drum mixing in this lesson. And one of the things that's really important is to make sure that you're not, like, in the mixing stage, not limiting your drums too much. And at this point, we definitely were, but nothing that we can't fix. So this is obviously something that comes up in mixing, and something that I wanted you to be aware of and that you may experience in your own mixing. So to help us not get -15 gain reduction on our limiting, but still maintain the loudness that we wish, one of the things I love putting on my mix bus is a saturator. So I'm going to put a basic saturation plugin. Sorry, this is a soft clipper. So a basic soft clipper. And we're just going to do, very soft clipping. And check out the difference once we add this on here. First of all, we can actually, you know, limit a little bit less, because we're actually going to be giving the limiter a bit more gain or volume as we push more audio into the soft clipper. So we reduced that about 3 dB there. So maybe let's try and push up around 3 dB in the soft clipper. So that sounds completely different in terms of just limiting itself. And the reason why is because your drums are the most transient elements for the most part in any mix. And when you're limiting, you're basically cutting off all the peaks at whatever threshold you're doing. And of course, you need a lower threshold to get a louder output. So the reason why it's great to put a soft clipper right before your limiter is we kind of smooth the peaks. We kind of tame the peaks so that it doesn't completely chop off. So it leaves a lot of your drum information, a lot of that transient information a bit more intact. So you actually gain, or you actually preserve a lot of the punch and dynamics from your drums just by adding a soft clipper before your limiter. Let's do maybe like an A-B. So we'll go to a B setting. Here goes the original limiting, which was 12.28 dB, and I'm muting the soft clipper. So it just feels like the drums are just smashed up against the mix, a little too harsh. So now here's the setting that we have now, where we're only doing 9 dBs of that's where our threshold is, or our gain in the limiter here, instead of 12. So basically 3 dBs down. So not working that as hard. And then we also have the soft clipper in, as you can see, with 3 dBs. So let's hear how that sounds.
Got all this time. Keep me waiting. Got all this time.
Sounds much more organic, much more real. The drums don't feel like they're pushing too hard. Cool. So that feels a lot better to me at that level. What I'm going to do now is, since we're focusing on the drums, we can mute the lead vocals because I just don't want the vocals to distract me. Usually the vocals, as long as you have the vocals in, your ear is going to be instantly drawn to them because it's the most human thing of this any song is the vocal, right? So, but if we want to focus on drums, I like to just mute the lead vocals for sure. And now let's go into the drum section and just play the same section again. So what I'm concerned with here is, as you can see, we haven't really done any processing on the drums yet. It sounds good the way it is, but there's definitely some things that we can do to make it sound even better. So as you see, no plugins on here besides some analog saturation, or analog summing, sorry. So notice when I play the drums, the snap kind of comes out a little bit for me, and I believe it's in this drum loop. Let me hear. Yeah. So there's a couple ways that we can go about this, and I'm gonna just try it the first way that I can think of, which is basically using some multiband compression around where those frequencies are in that snap track, because this is a stereo drum loop that we have going on here. We don't have that individual snap element that we can work with. So in that instance, if you ever encounter that in your own mixes, what you can do is just pull up a multiband compressor. Pro Q by FabFilter has a multiband compression thing built in, but you also can use, a plugin like Waves C4, for example, or you can also use the FabFilter Pro MB. Those are just some different options. But first thing I'm going to do is locate where that snap sound is coming from. We can actually just solo this drum loop. Sounds like it's somewhere around here. So if we want to soften the snap a little bit, all we got to do is compress this region a little bit and just see how that helps the situation. So let's do that now. So the snap definitely got a little bit more softer to me. The hat as well, and this is a little pushing, I feel. Let's figure out where the hat frequency is. So some of that frequency as well was a little pushing for me, so we can compress a little bit of that too, just to smooth out the overall drums. So let's hear with the mix in. Definitely a lot smoother, bypassed. Let's put it back in. The snap and hi-hat now feel a bit more warm, simply because those higher frequencies that are poking out are kind of tamed a bit more. So now one thing that we can do to give our kick a little bit more punch, looks like here we have a kick track as well as the drums, but let's see where the kick is mainly coming from. So we got that. So the drum loop is kind of giving us the upper end of the kick, whereas this dubbed in kick track by itself, that's kind of our bass. That's our meat in the kick, if you will. And we could use a bit more of that meat, I would say. As you can see here, this is actually at negative 13.8. So let's just try and boost the volume on that and just see how that feels in the mix. Looks like we have some automation here, so I can't simply just boost the volume. Because that is affecting the entire automation. So we'll just use the NLS gain right here just to boost some gain on this meteor dubbed in kick. Yeah, that feels a little bit more like it, the drums have a bit more weight to them. Cool. Let's listen to another section. So we're trying to pay attention to the individual elements in our drums and only applying processing to the drums if we feel that we need it. And this is the key in mixing, because I'm not just going to go on here and just apply a certain plugin or compression to everything. That's not how mixing works. It's really about paying attention to what jumps out. And to me, at this section, the programmed hi-hat is kind of jumping out. So this hi-hat right here, if I can play this section. So this hi-hat here is kind of jumping out to me a little bit. So there's two things that we can do. It's either a volume thing or B, it's a frequency thing. So I'm always on the air of let's, change the volume of the track and see how that feels. And if that doesn't do it, then, let's begin to play with some of the frequencies and figure out what's going on there. So we could try turning it down slightly, as long as there's no automation, which I don't think there is. Yeah, we don't have any automation on there, which is good. So I think that's at a level where it feels like it's a part of the drum kit, whereas before it felt like there was an organic drum kit being played and then this was just a dubbed in thing. I think the goal is to make this hi-hat feel like it's a part of the overall drum sound. And I feel like at that level, it kind of does that, kind of meshes in with the drums a bit more. But if you wanted to get even more granular, now we could throw on an EQ and we could actually reduce some of the clarity in this, dubbed in hi-hat track, just to make it fit in with the warm tone of the drums even more. So let's get a narrower Q and let's find the frequency. So all of this like high-end stuff here, that's pretty warm. That's pretty warm. It's like over here where like we can tell those frequencies there, you know, a real hi-hat wouldn't necessarily produce such crystal sounding frequencies in that region. So here we could just reduce some of this, and we could do this while listening to the entire drum set, just to know exactly when this hi-hat begins to feel more or less real with the rest of the drum set in. So that feels a little bit better. Of course, it's a little bit darker, but I feel like it fits in with the overall sound of the drums a bit more. So let's do a A-B. So here's before. And here's after. Nice. And so now another thing that I'm noticing is just the dynamics of the drums. Still like kind of like these claps and certain elements are kind of peaking a little bit when they hit. Like right there. So one thing that we can do to make sure those moments in this drum track aren't coming out too much is, again, do a multi-band compression. So this time we're going to do a high shelf across the entire drums, and I put this Pro Q3 on the drum bus where all of these drum elements are routing through. And basically we're just going to compress all the high end so that when those, you know, claps and snaps and all those like higher frequency hits come in that are pretty loud, this is going to kind of tame it and just bring it down so that the overall drum listening experience feels a bit more smooth. So mainly we want to get it on that hit here. That feels a little bit better. We could even go a little bit more dramatic. And this really is just a balancing act. The more that I push the band to the left, the more high-end frequencies that are being compressed with this multi-band compressor. So if you're compressing, sometimes it's a matter of, you know, more threshold. So we're doing negative 2.78 dB of compression at its maximum. Sometimes if you need more compression or you just need some of those claps, snaps, or whatever in your drums to get out of the way, those harsh frequencies, sometimes you just need to allow, you know, more of the range to be compressed. So it's kind of a balancing act. And you want to be careful not to compress too much because we don't want to take away too much of the transients. So now I feel like those moments in the drums are a bit more tame. Let's go to another section. So there's another thing that we can do to kind of warm up the sound of our drums. If this is something that you're looking for, this is also another thing I'm hearing with our drums here as we're doing some drum processing. One thing I like to do is add some tape on our drums to make it feel as though our drum tracks were played through a tape machine. A tape machine adds a lot. It's a form of saturation. Adds a little bit of warmth, a little bit of color, sometimes even a little bit of grit, depending on how much you crank it. But we're not necessarily going for grit. We're definitely going more for the warmth. And this is a great tape plugin by Softtube. It's just called Softtube Tape. But try this on your drum tracks or literally almost anything. If you just want it to be a little bit warmer, a little bit more analog sounding, that's kind of the vibe of this track. And we got 3 different tape settings that we can choose from in this particular plugin. So let's just try tape A and go from there. I think I'm liking either C or B. Let's play right around the verse section. So I think I'm liking C. And one thing to be careful of when you're using tape is sometimes tape can feel like it's adding a bit more low end. So this could, potentially cause you to either, decrease the volume of your kick. Sometimes it feels like it can kind of compress the low end. It does all of these things in its own unique way. And every tape plugin is kind of different, but this one is one of my favorites, just because it's pretty transparent. It doesn't change it too much, whereas some others can just drastically change the sound. So another thing you can do is tape speed. So the faster the tape speed, the more clear the sound is. The slower the tape speed, the more distorted, and the more lo-fi, the more warmer the sound is. Generally keeping it around 15 studio, that's why it's called studio, is very good. But you can play with this as well, and I'll show you what that sounds like. So right there at 3, it's almost like we lost a little bit of low end with the kick. So it kind of starts to squeeze and kind of starts to distort, in a way, the signal once you get really, really low here. But 7 is good for sure. 15 is great. 7 and 15 are great. It's for sure if you want a bit more warmth and fatness as well, those are great. I think 15 is the way to go. All right, let's listen to maybe just another section and just see if there's anything else we want to do with our drums. So let's do one thing here. I'm going to mute. There's definitely some elements in the music. Some music elements that I want to adjust their volume. But let's listen back to the drums with the music elements muted. Oh, I see what's going on right now. we have some music tracks that aren't going to the music bus, so we got to clear that out. Okay, yeah, so these are going to the mix bus. So we have strings and brass. Let me push these auxiliary tracks a little bit closer. These were the exact elements that were kind of sticking out for me. And instead of going directly to the mix bus, which they are, I'm going to reroute these to the music bus. There it is there. And the reason for doing this is these are music elements to me, you know, the strings, the brass. So it was to my mistake earlier that I had it routed directly to the mix bus. I definitely wanted that in the music bus. So now when I play, we shouldn't hear those elements. And this is always a good practice to do when, however far along in your mix you are, to just, you know, sometimes you mute these greater groups, you know, like your music, your drums, your vocals, just to make sure that if I mute the music bus, I don't hear any other music elements. And in this instance, and typically I don't consider bass a music element because I process it differently. So we do hear bass right now, which is fine. But everything else musically, you know, strings, pianos, brass, all that stuff is kind of muted right now. So I think for these drums, and this isn't always the case with every song, but I think I'm going for just a warmer tone in general with these drums. So a little bit less high end. And as you can see here, we're already doing some multi-band compression there, which is great. Another thing that we can do is actually, you know, EQ our drums. And a fun way of doing this is using something like a Pultec EQ. And I really love the sound of these EQs for a number of things. But this is a great EQ to, just slap on about just almost anything. If you're boosting, it adds a really great shine to things. But in this instance, I'm just going to use the attenuation. And I'm just going to make the drums a bit more warmer, a bit more, not dull. I don't think dull is the right word, but just warmth. So a little bit less of the high-end clarity. And I feel like this is one of the better plugins to do that for me. So check this out. And I really like using plugins like this for situations like this when I want to make something warmer instead of like doing something very specific with like a parametric EQ. If I just generally want to make something warmer, I love these type of EQs because I'm more so listening with my ears instead of looking at the frequency spectrum and seeing all the different frequencies come in and just trying to identify certain little ones. Like, you don't have to be that nuanced. Sometimes using something like a Pultec where it's just a couple knobs and you're just using your ears allows you to really get the general vibe of what you're going for a bit more. So I feel like that definitely helped us warm up the drums a little bit. Let's hear the verse. This is before. Here's after. And a cool thing that we can also do with this plugin is just give the kick overall in the drums here just a little bit more weight, a little bit more body. So to give the drums warmth, all we did was attenuate the high end. But if we want to give the drums overall a little bit more oomph, a little bit more weight, which is something I'm looking for in this track, we can boost a bit now in the anywhere between 20, 30, 60 hertz, more than likely. So let's play with that a bit. So as you can see there, just a little bit of a notch kind of just gave that kick just a little bit more oomph, you know? And attenuating there on the high end, all using our ears, helped us kind of just warm the drums a little bit. And we kept the bandwidth, which is how narrow or sharp your cue is. We kept that right in the middle. Generally, that's a good starting point. If you were looking to boost something, like if I were to put this on a kick or something, maybe I would go a little bit more narrow to get more of that punch and that push out in the low end. But for just gradual kind of shaping, this is really good. So let's listen to one more before and after, maybe on the chorus. Tell me why you've got all this time. And let's put it in. Sounds really good. So as you can see there, you know, we shaped the tone of the drums a bit. Don't worry about little yellow marks here in Pro Tools, or don't even worry about if plugins are slightly, you know, peaking at sometimes. Just mainly pay attention to what you're hearing. Of course, if plugins are peaking literally all the time, that's an issue that you may want to check. But just pay attention to how it makes you feel. So yeah, we have a little bit more of our drums processed now with just in 2 different EQs doing different things, although this one is more of a multi-band. Let's listen, let's put back in the music tracks now and just see how the drums feel. So definitely our kick is a little stronger, of course, because we're, you know, we added tape. We also boosted some low end, cut high end. All of these things will make your kick pop out or feel like it's popping out even more. So one thing we can do actually is just, you know, we boosted our kick originally, 2.6 dB it looks like. We can bring this down a little bit just to compensate now and just make it feel more natural, not like something is, you know, pushing too hard. So even just 1 dB of you know, a volume difference made a huge difference. So I'm really liking how the drums are sounding. So to just kind of recap what we did, we definitely felt like we needed more drum punch, and overall what was happening was the drums, the music, and the vocals were slightly out of balance at the beginning of the mix. Our vocals were pretty hot. Our music tracks, which is a lot of our mid-range, was pretty hot as well, which was causing our drums to not be as punchy. So we kind of rebalanced those first. at the group level, just rebalancing the drum bus. So we gave that a little bit more volume. We brought down the music bus and we brought down the vocal bus. The next thing we did is we realized that we were limiting a little bit too much, which can happen in mixing all the time. And where's my limiter? A lot of tracks here. So we had our limiter, and yeah, we were getting like -15 gain reduction on here, which is quite a lot. But guess what? We didn't have a soft clipper beforehand. So I went over how a soft clipper helps you retain a lot of the transient and punch information in your mix overall, which a lot of times is your drums. So sometimes to process your drums, or to help process your drums, you definitely got to look at what you're doing on your mix bus, just to make sure you're not over compressing, over limiting, etc. Then we went into the individual drums themselves. We wanted more kick, so we boosted some kick volume just on this channel here. Since we had automation, we just boosted it on this plugin because we wanted more kick oomph. There was some snaps and some claps in this track that were a little harsh. So we tamed those frequencies here with a little bit of multi-band compression, very simple stuff. We warmed up this hi-hat track a little bit just by cutting some super, super high frequencies that wouldn't naturally occur in like acoustic drum set. So we made that kind of hi-hat feel like it meshed and felt more in line with the rest of the drums. And then we went over to our drum bus and we did a little bit more multi-band compression just to tame like when some of those claps and snaps and harsher high-end elements do come in the mix. We added an EQ, just a general kind of broad stroke EQ that is giving our low end a bit more of a push to give our kick a bit more push. And then we're also attenuating right around 12K just to make the drums feel a little bit warmer. And then we added tape as well to the overall drums, which for sure is very slight, but is one of those things that like, it's, there's no going back once you hear, your drums through a tape machine. It just makes them come alive in a way that just feels cool. That where, digital is kind of cold, and this just brings some more of that analog life into your drums, whether they're digital drums or acoustic live recorded drums like these ones. And that's pretty much drum processing. Of course, there's like things that I could do at this moment, but I'm not really hearing too much. And I want to show you guys and talk through this mix and just give you an idea of what it really means to mix a track in real life. It's not about slapping a plugin on every single insert. Oftentimes, it's really not even needed. So for this particular track, this is what I would do. Now, we may come back and revisit later down the line in the mix, but for here I'm pretty solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in lesson number 9. Let's go. Peace.